We know the Melbourne Cup is the race that stops the nation, but in recent years it stopped many people from loving racing the way we all do after some terrible deaths and injuries in the great race. The anti-racing brigade has taken that on board and have upped the ante in trying to turn people away from the industry, despite the new vet checks and scans aimed at safeguarding our horses on the track. Vicky Leonard and her Kick Collective have started Kick Up, which is now fighting back, dispelling a lot of the myths about racing with actual facts and figures.
Say no to the cup.
Breds every year, over 10,000 we estimate.
Vicky, explain the background to Kick Up. I mean, we've all been in a position where people are saying they don't like the racing industry, particularly a lot of young people are really facing that. But I guess that's the genesis of why you've started it.
Yeah, it's unfair to, those of us who are working in the industry every day, those that are getting up at 3 a.m, at 6 a.m in the pouring rain to look after these animals, that we're hit with such vitriol, particularly heading into Cup Week. And a lot of it is just based on mistruths and misconceptions, and sadly tends to be that the irrational are the loudest, and we are fighting that, a very loud voice coming from the activist side of things. So sort of the genesis of Kick Up was to provide an opportunity for people to seek a more balanced view in the industry. We're not trying to throw any horse racing propaganda up there. We're not going to hide behind some areas where we need to be doing better, but we're providing a place for people to go to actually find out the truth with validated statistics.
You have some great staff, and we all know people with kids, that are sort of in their late teens, early 20s, and they're the ones that are really copying this from the younger generation.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I've got, within my kick team, there's sort of 12 of them in there, and all of them in their 20s, of which one, Charlotte Chittick, grew up in the industry. The rest all found it, discovered it and loved the industry. Charlotte, is quite interesting because she's friends with a lot of the children of other people in the industry that have come through, and they're at uni now. You've got young Charlie Cox, Vin's son, you've got Willa Mitchell, who's actually doing a placement with Godolphin at the moment, and they're the ones that are actually really facing it on a day-to-day level, particularly those still at uni. They are dealing with normal society, should I say, not staying within the industry bubble, and so they're the ones having to defend our sport a lot of the time. They need to be armed with the right information to be able to do that.
And it is about stats, isn't it? Some of the claims being pushed by the anti-racing brigade are outrageous.
Absolutely. Like, a lot of them are just completely and utterly not true and very easy to defend. We look at, the stat thrown around about, 10,000 horses out of training go to the slaughterhouse every year. Well, we only breed 12,500, of which 35% go back into breeding. 40% we know go into eventing and show horse, and then a lot go into as companion animals or as nannies or various other occupations. There's just mathematically no way it's possible. One of the challenges is some things aren't measured accurately enough. We know in the industry that there's a real push towards full life cycle transparency and traceability, which will be massive. However, that's beyond the remit of just the racing industry. We actually need all horses to be tracked, because once they leave and exit the racing system, right now it's impossible to track that. So while there's areas we could be doing better, there's areas that's had copious amounts of research on it. One that we cop a lot of flack for is 2-year-old racing, and that's because the ordinary person, which is totally understandable, think that it's equatable to, say, a 6-year-old child running, but it's just simply not. The horse, the thoroughbred, has been bred for speed, for precocity, and then they complete 98% of their growth by the time they turn 2. So we know that the bone remodelling required to make sure that they are sound and healthy thoroughbreds, the science behind it is absolutely unequivocal, that horses that race at 2 have longer, sounder careers than those that don't. But it's just a matter of explaining it, and explaining that, a 2-year-old racehorse is actually equivalent to an 18-year-old child, not a 6-year-old. So some of it's just putting it into a bit more, easier and more simple terms to understand.
Yeah, and you see it when you're in the industry. You've only got to watch the foals gambling around. They're galloping from the day they're born, literally. Within hours of being born, they want to be out and running. They love to run. And the other interesting stat I saw was, I think about almost 4% of owners actually rehome their horses themselves. They take them back. And I know I've done that. I've rehomed them. They've come back to me. That's a big percentage, really, when you're looking at the amount of horses that are coming out of racing.
Yeah, so a lot of our stats, we've been really focused on getting peer-reviewed science papers, because then we know that it's gone through that process. For a research paper to be published in a veterinary journal or a science journal, it has to have gone through a really arduous process. There was an interesting study done in the 2017-2018 season, led by a vet who's done a lot for addressing misconceptions in the industry, Dr. Meredith Flash. Her and other partners really surveyed extensively that racing population, and then they've applied that and extrapolated it out. What they've been able to show is that a lot of people, they take it on that responsibility themselves to rehome the horse, and they are, I mean, we're here at Silverdale or here at, another client, David Cobritz at Musk Creek, they've had yearlings that, might not have passed the x-rays and weren't saleable or not racing prospects that are now nannies on the farm. It's not just the Group 1 winners that get that sort of treatment.
Someone like Shane Rose, with all luck, a little Aussie thoroughbred, competing at the highest level. What we're seeing too with the take-up, and this is what the stats eventually will tell, with a lot of the Sport Horse Association, those sorts of places where horses are going into the equestrian world, it's actually not only driving their take-up, but it's helping the elite competitors as well to find the best horses to compete for Australia, for instance, which then again generates the conversation about how great thoroughbreds are.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the thoroughbreds are a really athletic breed, which is fantastic because it gives it a value. I mean, when we get the all slow horses killed in the slaughterhouse, you'll see a lot of that coming out over the, Cup week. It's just simply not true, largely because, a thoroughbred has a great value. I mean, they are very athletic individuals, so they can take to show jumping, they can take to eventing and dressage. And what's awesome is these rehoming programs coming through, whether it's placing them in some of these rehomers like Victoria does, or buying properties to get them pushed through like New South Wales does. There's great initiatives to make sure that these horses go through a process and then the elite ones can end up with your Shane Rose. And they know a lot of the time they're breaking and pre-training a lot of young thoroughbreds in that then go to the racing system and then come back to them. So they know what they're looking for. They know they've gone through a great nutritional process as a youngster. They've been handled properly by people who know what they're doing. And they've been well cared for by great vets, farriers, their entire career until they reach that point.
And one thing I've noticed since you started Kick Up, which is only a matter of, a couple of weeks ago, the feedback is enormous. I mean, you're getting a lot of support. What can people do if they really, you have the website, which is great, but how can people sort of really feel confident in taking these facts and actually delivering them to their peers, whether it be at uni or wherever they are?
What we're finding is that the silent majority are actually quite open. They really want to consider a balanced perspective. So when you see a comment that's on social media and it's really taken off and it's a lot of vitriol towards the industry, it is important to drop something back in there that shows those people that aren't actually commenting but are reading the comments that there's another perspective. Because right now what we're finding is that there's a lot of shouting coming in from the activists, and all that we've got to do is say, hey, have you considered an alternative perspective? Maybe you'd like to read this article, visit this website, or here's a stat that we know is peer reviewed, we know it's accurate, you might be interested in, you can learn more here. Those types of actions are what's going to help us come back, because you get caught up reading comments of articles and things. But if you don't see another perspective presented, no one's ever going to be exposed to it. It's that majority in the middle that actually do want to consider a balanced view. They're not hard left, they quite, really are open to different perspectives. We just need to make sure they have access to it.
And you are an independent organisation. I mean, you're doing this yourself. It's quite extraordinary. It's something you need support as well.
We've been working on this within the Kick team for the last 12 months, and it's a project I've been working on for the last 6 years, as many people know. So everything to date has been driven by us at Kick and sort of, come out of my pocket. But going forward to really ramp up, we are going to need that support to grow, and there's a strategy that's outlined on the website as to where we can go from here. At the moment, our content is largely defensive because that's the most urgent requirement, is to make sure people have that alternate view. But down the line, we want to be showcasing the great stuff. We want to have a strong presence on the TikToks, where the young people are coming through, showing off our industry as well. Not just the Group 1 winners being looked after, but the everyday things that they're not really exposed to at the moment. A horse is as good as a zoo creature to a lot of young people that have grown up in a city these days. So there's heaps that we can be doing from a promotional area as well. And reaching the public is going to take a really strategic approach, using some modern marketing technology and some great tools that are out there, using social listening tools to be able to see what things are becoming an issue before they become an issue. So in order to achieve that, we are going to have to, rally and try and get some sponsorship. We want to remain an independent organisation. We're in the process at the moment of building out our board. At the moment it's started up by Nathan Scrivener, who works for me at KIC, and Tanita Vella, who's been heavily involved. Tanita's the marketing manager at Godolphin, and making sure that it is driven by the industry, for the industry, to make sure that it reaches the public. Certainly any way you can help would be, to share our message, and then if there's any funding that you can contribute, it would be very warmly received.
And it's all about promoting the industry. I mean, we love the industry. We see so many people working in it who dearly love these horses, and that's the message that has to get across.
Absolutely. I think though people are a little bit sick of just seeing the love the horse messages, and that's why we're really making sure that everything, we want it to have some grunt behind it, have real messages behind it, and a lot of reality. Like, we want to show that it's absolutely teeming down with rain, and these guys are foaling these mares, or they're making sure that the horses get worked and then, recover properly. That's the sort of gruesome reality that we also want to show. And that authenticity is really appealing, particularly to the younger generations who are a bit sick of stuff having a layer of gloss over it. And we can show that because our industry is full of awesome stuff.
And it's great. I mean, what we're trying to do with Thoroughbreds at Go To is educate and tell people that, the thoroughbred can be wonderful. It needs to be looked after this way. You need to actually have the education, and then you have a wonderful horse away from racing.
Correct. We're dealing with one of the most beautiful and incredible animals, which certainly makes it easy from a marketing perspective to show what we're working with. And by educating people on just how dynamic the thoroughbred is, not just in racing, but outside it as well, look, we're going to end up with a lot more powerful as an industry.